I'm going to give you update information about what's going on here at Rainier Avenue Radio. Don't forget, this Saturday, we'll be down at the Rainier Beach Plaza celebrating Juneteenth with the Atlantic Street Center. A lot of special stuff going on. Sequina Alexander, who is a descendant of Black Wall Street, will be here to share with us her stories. Her great-grandfather, James O. Goodwin, was the youngest entrepreneur on Black Wall Street.
Wow.
And also owned the first Black newspaper during that period of time as well. And Sequina has taken up that mantle. She is the owner of the only or first, at least, Black-owned art gallery in Oklahoma.
Wow.
So she'll be here to share with us her experiences on Juneteenth from her perspective and Black Wall Street and African American contributions. That will again be 11 to 3. We'll be broadcasting live if you cannot make it down to the Rainier Beach Plaza. Also, there will be the Legacy Awards, this year's winners of the Legacy Awards presentation. This is the first annual. Will be Eddie Rye Jr., former Seattle King County Council member Larry Gossett, Elmer Dixon and Aaron Dixon, founders of the Seattle Black Panther Party. Josephine Howell will be singing as well. All this is taking place on Saturday between 11 to 3 at Atlantic Street Center, a celebration of Juneteenth. But wait, there's more. Then we're going to come back here to the Columbia City Theater, which is where we are right now, and there'll be a presentation of the Ma'afa Experience. This film is a film of the play, The Ma'afa Experience, and it's just incredible, and some great things going on here. That starts at 3. Doors open 3:30. The film will start. Then there'll be a little break, and after the film, and then there'll be a Q&A session that will take place as well. On June 21st, we're presenting Make Music Day. Been waiting for this every summer solstice, June 21st. We present Make Music Day. We've got live music for you down on the waterfront on Pier 62 from noon to 6. A lot of great performances. Tessa Rosa, Soundproof with Cherry G, Uriah, Markel from the Circle, Ancient Robots. From 4 to 10, we'll be here at the Columbia City Theater. It's all on the same day. We'll also be in Ballard at Senior Housing from 1 to 4. It's Make Music Day, a celebration and a festival unlike any other. The thing is, just make music, have fun. We invite you to make music in your community as well, in your home, wherever you are. Just make some music on that day. We'll be, again, 4 to 10 here at the Columbia City Theater. Kevin Gardner will be performing. Goodie Bag will be performing. Nate Bryan will be performing, and then Dub Lounge International will be performing. The 23rd, we'll be presenting a film by Greg Allen. It's a documentary on the Seattle Black Panther Party. So you heard me mention before that Elmer and Aaron Dixon will be with us at the Juneteenth celebration. Well, there'll be a documentary film. If you're unfamiliar with the Seattle Black Panther Party, you definitely want to check out this film. And this is all free. Everything I'm talking about, Jazz, is free.
Wow, that's a packed weekend.
Free dollars. And on June 15th, Black Arts Legacies, and that's what we're here to talk about this morning.
Yeah.
So let's start with this. Let's find out a little information on your background.
Yeah, so my name's Jazz. I'm an arts writer here in Seattle, and I have been doing so for the past 4.5 years. I used to write for The Stranger until March. But yeah, I really love Seattle arts and culture scene. I actually grew up in Redmond, so across the lake, but definitely Puget Sound till I die, basically. Puget Sound area till I die. But yeah, I'm a Gemini. I live in the Central District. Yeah. That's me in a nutshell.
Okay. Now, Black Arts Legacies presented by Crosscut. For someone who may have just arrived from Mars and doesn't know anything about Black Arts Legacies, let's give them the details on this event.
Yeah, so Black Arts Legacies is an ever-growing archive of written profiles, videos, podcasts, photos of Black artists in Seattle. That includes musicians, architects, performers, dancers, just everyone under the sun that like makes things past and present. And specifically here in Seattle. And it's a really kind of beautiful archive of how Black artists have shaped the city. And on Thursday, we're going to be having a celebration of these artists. And this project is now in its second year. And we highlighted 15 artists. And so some of them will be at the event, reading poetry or playing music. People will have an opportunity to see some of the photos that were taken for this project. There'll be QR codes that will link you to the video profiles or the written profiles. So I think it's a really great way to kick off Juneteenth weekend.
Now, what was the impetus for getting Black Arts Legacy started? What led to that?
Yeah, well, I think it kind of the idea kind of generated right after the 2020 protests in Seattle. And there was just a lot of reflection on how best to support the Black community here and Black artists in particular. And so the Seattle Arts Commission was kind of brainstorming, and arts advocates Vivian Phillips and Dr. Quentin Morris had this idea for like a digital yearbook, basically, of Black artists. And they came to Crosscut, whose coverage they really respected and liked their perspective. And this project kind of got kicked off, right? So it's now in its second year. The first year, there was like 23 or 26 artists highlighted. So that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot.
But you know what? It's a drop in the bucket.
Absolutely.
When compared to the talent and all of the interdisciplinaries that you're talking about here. But so it's nice to say, okay, you know what? We're not going to do this 2-3. We're going to go, kind of big, you dig, and get 26 people started. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I think like building off of that, like I think when when a lot of people who maybe aren't from Seattle think of Black artists from Seattle, there's Jimi Hendrix, Quincy Jones, and Jacob Lawrence, and that's kind of where the list begins and ends. But I think what's great about this project is that it highlights people who, may not be as well known outside of certain communities, or who have passed and maybe whose work kind of got lost in the archive or wasn't really well documented. And so I think that's what also I love about this project, is that I'm learning so much about Seattle and Seattle history through, artists both living and deceased. And it's been really kind of gratifying to be able to, highlight some of the work that, these dozens of artists are doing.
Black Arts Legacies, June 15th, recognizes an intergenerational group of local musicians, dancers, visual artists, poets, performers, curators, architects whose creative expressions document the complexity of being a Black artist in Seattle. How can folks get down this year if they say, oh, well, wait a minute, I want to be involved, I want to be a part of this? How do they do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think just going to the website and checking out some of the profiles there. It's blackartslegacies.crosscut.com, I think. And I think, again, like coming out to this event on Thursday would be also a really great way to get involved. But also, I think just, promoting some of the work that these great artists are doing. I wrote about Amanda Morgan, who's the first Black woman to be a soloist at the Pacific Northwest Ballet, which is like a huge deal. She's like in her early 20s and she's doing this amazing work. I wrote about Benjamin Hunter, who I believe has done a lot of shows as well. Yep. So yeah, I think just getting out and supporting Black arts in like a kind of, physical sense, I think that's a really great way to get involved too.
So where is this taking place?
It's taking place at the Washington Hall right outside of Central District, or it's in the Central District. Yeah.
Yeah. Just off Yesler.
Yeah, just off Yesler.
And the time
I think it starts at 6:30 and it goes till 9 p.m.
Okay, 6:30 to 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Washington Hall.
Yeah.
June 15th, and that is Thursday?
That is Thursday. I will be there. There'll be some catered bites. I think a cash bar as well. So live music, good vibes, good people.
From your perspective, why is it important that we honor and document, again, these Black artists and their contributions to our community, to our society?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important because their work is important, right? I think, and not just to the Black community, but to the greater Seattle community at large. And especially like in some of the research that I've been doing, it's been really amazing to see the ways that all of these artists are interconnected. I wrote about Preston Wadley, who is a multimedia artist. He was a teacher at Cornish for, several decades, and he studied under Jacob Lawrence, who's one of the, greatest modernist painters of all time, right? And so I think it's really important to kind of highlight the wealth of Black art that we have in this city, because it's a way to rethink how, the influences that the city has, and I think even just for me personally writing it, it's really shaped the way that I move through the Central District or move through certain neighborhoods or appreciate certain artists. I think it just kind of is important to give back and learn the history of your community.
You're listening to Street Beat. It's me, your host, Tony B. My guest is Jazz Kymick, contributor, very instrumental in producing this year's Black Arts Legacies project. Can we talk about some of the folks this year?
Yeah. So there's been 15 artists that are highlighted this year. 10 profiles have already dropped. One of my favorites to write was about Nate Long, who is no longer. Do you know Nate Long?
Familiar with me.
Yeah, he's such a cool guy. I didn't realize that I knew him because one of my favorite movies set in Seattle is called Scorchy. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's like the 70s like crime exploitation film, and he plays like a cop in it, and he's like dressed in this like red velvet suit. He looks so cool. And so when I was assigned to look into him, I was like, wow, I had no idea. And I almost couldn't keep up with the amount of people that wanted to reach out to me about him. He was a TV producer. He was a stuntman. He spoke Japanese, French. He was a judo and karate black belt, and he was a huge figure in the Central area community in the 70s and 80s. And he helped produce this show called Action Inner City on Como, where it just put Black teenagers and young adults in charge of a television show, like a public affairs show about issues that were affecting the Black community at the time. Because he really understood the power of representation, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera, and seeing the ways in which, the Watts riots, the Detroit riots were being covered in the late 60s. He was like, it's important to have Black journalists, Black producers being the ones to create this content for Black people. And so, like Steve Poole, Eddie Rye Jr., like so many like instrumental Black, artists and activists got their start on this show, which is incredible. And he also produced a show called South by Northwest, for public access television, and it's about Black pioneers in the Pacific Northwest, which was a story that was pretty, not highlighted at the time. And so, yeah, and he just seemed to be this gregarious man. And I really wish I could have met him. He passed, I think, in the early 2000s. So just someone who's like, I think that's an example of like why this project is important, because, he's touched so many people's lives and was so instrumental in being like a mentor to Mayor Norm Rice, that I didn't previously know about. And so that was one of my favorite stories to produce. I almost couldn't cut it down. I was like, there's so much that he's done. So that was definitely one of my favorites to write. How do you know of Nate Long?
So many different things. Yeah. Just an extraordinary person. When you hear about one person and a person in one area, and then you find out their background in so many different areas. I mean, I think that is really awesome.
Yeah.
That Nate Long is being highlighted.
Absolutely.
Because of all of the things. What's that word that they use when somebody does a whole bunch of things? And
Renaissance man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's him and like and I almost couldn't include everything, obviously, but he he was stationed in Japan, and that's where he learned judo. And he actually like fought on the Japanese police like judo team. Like he was that good. Like I was just like, I don't know. It's yeah, like you said, it's really interesting learning about, you know, the threads of people's lives and how it can affect others. And it's great to honor a man like Nate Long for sure.
This is the second year, right?
The second year
of Black Arts Legacies. This is presented by Comcast at Washington Hall, 6:30 to 9 o'clock.
Yes.
On Thursday.
On
Thursday. And again, let's a couple more people.
Yeah. Someone else that comes to mind is also another artist who is no longer with us. His name is Milt Simons. He was a painter and also a Renaissance man. He was an amateur fencer, a musician, a dancer, a fashion designer, a painter. And he was someone who, he was the first Black arts instructor in Washington State. He really had this beautiful approach to painting. And it was really kind of abstract, and he was a musician, so there's a lot of musicians featured in it. And he just he was someone that was kind of ahead of his time, right? He was, you know, a Black artist in Seattle in the 50s, when there wasn't, you know, tons of representation or support for that. You know, he was also a musician. He played the vibraphone in this band called Jazzes, which was about like spontaneous improvisation and the music. I don't know if you've ever listened to Dorothy Ashby. Are you big into like jazz music at all?
Jazz, but not a lot of Dorothy Ashby.
Yeah, Dorothy Ashby, she was like this really cool Afro like harpist, or like she kind of incorporated the harp into jazz in this way that's like beautiful and feels really spiritual. And Jazzes is very much in that same vein. And again, like he just didn't really get the recognition that I think he really deserved at the time. So it felt really great to highlight a story like his and how, you know, forward thinking his art was. And also an interesting connection is that one of his studio in Madrona actually became the Seattle Black Panthers headquarters in the 70s. So it's also about this project, which is really cool, is like you see the ways that, you know, the community has ties to one another in ways that, you know, maybe weren't obvious in the first place. But that was one of my favorites. Also, I wrote about Jordan Amani Keith, who is a Seattle civic poet from like 2019 to I believe 2021 or 22. And like, I love her approach to writing about poetry or writing poetry. It incorporates like the natural, and also just like embodied experiences as well. She's also someone that's been like all over the city. Like she was Seattle Public Library's first naturalist in residence. She's done a lot of really excellent like public poetry campaigns. And I think like her work and reading her poetry has been really eye-opening to me about thinking about how I move through the city. And also how I, like, as a Black person, also like move through nature and my relationship with nature. And I think that it just was a really rewarding experience being able to talk with her. And she's also someone that's like, it's called like ekphrastic poetry. So it's poetry that's really inspired by art. And so she's like also inspired by other Black artists here in the city, like Barbara Earl Thomas. And so it's interesting to see the ways in which her poetry responds to other Black artists here in the city.
Was Barbara Earl Thomas last year?
Yes. Yeah. And Barbara Earl Thomas, that's another connection, is that she was also highlighted last year as part of this project. So again, like there's all these like threads that bind everyone together. And so it's been really cool to see how kind of connected the Black arts community is here in Seattle.
You know, what I'm enjoying hearing is the opportunity to expose, I'll just call these Renaissance folks.
Yes.
Because so often now, folks specialize, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, to a degree, we forget that we can do multiple things.
Absolutely.
And excel at multiple things.
Yeah.
And the societal times we live in kind of hyper focus on, well, do one thing and anyway,
Yeah.
I love the fact that you're bringing out all of these people who do a number of different things and sharing that information. Again, my guest is Jazz Kymink. I told you she was instrumental in producing this year's Black Arts Legacies. So what was this experience like for you? And share a little bit more of the role. We hear about the writing that you're doing. What was it involved in producing this year's event?
Yeah, I mean, I think it involved a lot of, for certain people, it involved a lot of going into the archives. Like I went to the UW, University of Washington archives to look for a lot of stuff about Milt Simons, the painter I was just talking about. I went to Seattle Public Library to delve into their archives for stuff about Nate Long. So it did involve kind of a lot of like hands-on, type of work. And then it's also just, I mean, so much about reporting is just trying to find the right people to talk to. I remember when I was writing about Nate Long, it was really kind of difficult in the beginning for me to find someone that could, tell me a lot more about his life because he had so many different eras. And I called up one person. I ended up connecting with Kabibi Monet, and she like let everyone know. And I got calls, I got texts, I got like voicemails, and people just being like, I know this about Nate Long, I know this. So that was really great. Is also just being able to be connected with like community members in that way. And I think just also personally, I mean, I grew up, in the Puget Sound region, but my family is mostly based in like Kansas and Missouri. And so it felt really great for me to be really connected with the history of the Black community here in Seattle, since my family isn't from here. And so that felt like such a great experience just personally for me, is just, especially living in the Central District too, is like, it made me look at certain, corners differently, or just knowing that, like this used to be a judo studio, or like this used to be a place where kids would learn how to do film. Like it really opened up a lot for me. And I hope that people reading it opens up a lot of new connections for them as well.
Street Beat. We are live, Rainier Avenue Radio, here at the Columbia City Theater, the home of Rainier Avenue Radio. And you'd never been here before, so you don't know the history.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still learning. Yeah,
and the place that it shares in our community, in addition to being currently the home of Rainier Avenue Radio. And you mentioned Kabibi Monet. Yeah. And so I'm just going to give Kabibi a shot. I say we need to bubble wrap Kabibi. We need to make sure
yes, absolutely.
She's such a living
treasure,
piece of history.
Absolutely.
That we have, and informationally, just incredible resource.
Absolutely.
That you've shared for that. Now, is this information Black Arts Legacies, as it continues to grow, is it going to be curated? Is it going to be archived? Is it going to be available so that the work that was done to get information on these folks will be easily accessible? Yeah, so it's going to be on Crosscut's website, I believe, like in perpetuity. So it's going to be there for a long time. And it's like something that is going to grow. So this is its second year. Hopefully we can do a third year, because there's, again, like you said at the beginning of this program, like there's so many stories out there. There's so many people to highlight and to, make sure that their stories are recorded. So yes, this is something that you can access forever on crosscut.com. Now, you said that very it's important to make sure the stories are recorded forever. Easier said than done. Absolutely, especially in the Black community. Oftentimes our history is written by others and not by us from our perspective. Right. Let's talk about that. I want to get your perspective and your feelings on that. You say that like, oh, of course. But it's a pretty big deal. Yeah. It's a huge deal. And so, sorry, what was the question? Ultimately, your perspective on making sure that our history is documented, that we document our history and then make it available. Why is that important to you? Yeah, I mean, I think it's just because that's not something that I feel like I ever really grew up with, right? It's something that I felt like I really had to dive through. Like I had to go through this process, right, to be able to get it. And so I think that like
being able to make it more accessible to just anyone that's curious about it, and especially like Black community members that are curious about it, is like extremely important, because I know I'm not alone in not knowing certain things about my own community. And that like, and then also on top of the fact being written by people who are not a part of the community, right? And so kind of putting their own biases, or, you know, I think it's something that like I was trying to avoid in writing it, is like only talking about Black artists' struggle, because I feel like a lot of times, like when written by like profiles or perspectives on like Black artists, it focuses on like, you know, the discrimination part, which is a huge part of everything, but it doesn't really often focus on like what their actual thoughts are and like what their actual work is and what they were trying to say. It highlights this kind of like sadder thing. Mm-hmm. And so I think in trying to be, you know, put more of a community perspective on it, it's like, of course, highlighting the struggles that people went through, but it's like, what did they want to say with their art, right? Like, what were their goals? Like, what were their desires? What were their dreams? Like, what was going on through their heads, you know? And so I think that's also why it's important to have community members write stories like these, is because there's just a greater perspective and on how to write these stories or put them together.
You know, Jazz, slavery, racism, oppression, it's part of our history, but Absolutely. It's not all of our history. Again, my guest is Jazz Kimick, instrumental in producing this year's Black Arts Legacy project, June 15th, Washington Hall, 6:30 to 9 p.m. Got a couple minutes left. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to fire a question at you. I am going to give you the opportunity, though, to share with our audience anything that you would like them to know about this upcoming event. Yeah,
I mean, I would love to see everyone there. And there in support of like this project, and also just the artists in general. And I just want to like say thank you, even though I'm not sure how many people I've spoken to specifically that are listening, but it just was it felt like an honor, really, to be able to write about these artists that are both like with us and not with us anymore. And it really felt like it rooted me even more in this city. And so I think like, you know, I wrote it, but like, I think you can absolutely feel that way reading it too. And I just think it's important that, you know, maybe if you can't get to it now, like definitely to making the time to sit down and read these stories by both me and like my other contributors, co-contributors to this project. Because it's, again, like it's really important for everyone to know and to spread the word.
All right. I'm going to get a head start on something, Jazz, if you don't mind. You're talking about sharing information and the importance of that, providing voice to people. I'm getting a head start on something that we are kicking off tomorrow here at Rainier Avenue Radio. It is our first ever fundraising campaign.
Oh, wow.
And we provide opportunities like this to our community. Mm-hmm. And we do this, you know, we provide members of our community an opportunity to be on the air and have their own shows and amplify their voices. We don't charge for that. Actually, we train folks for that. So starting tomorrow, you can actually go to our website, hit the donate button, and you'll be given some options to donate. We could really use your assistance. This is, again, our first time at ever doing this, and we're just wanting to grow what we do, continue to build community. So starting tomorrow, you'll hear more about it on Wednesday, our first ever fundraising campaign. Again, some stuff that we've got coming up, the Juneteenth celebration with ASC, Atlantic Street Center, on June 17th, Saturday from 11 to 3. And then here at the there it is right there. And then here at the Columbia City Theater from 3:30 to 7:30, I believe, the showing of the Ma'afa Experience. Then our Make Music Day celebration all day long on Wednesday, the 21st, 12 to 6 at the Pier 62 waterfront. And then here at the Columbia City Theater from 4 to 10. And then also on the 23rd, the documentary film of the Seattle Black Panther Party. these are just some things that we do. And first time we've asked for your support, community, in assisting us with making these happen. You'll see the results. On July 10th, we're starting classes for 8th through 12th graders. Those will be classes where we teach everything jazz, from journalism, copywriting, editing, film, photography, broadcast, archiving.
All important,
Yeah,
all super important.
All important. That's what we do. That's how we get down. And don't forget, June 15th, Black Arts Legacies. Jazz, you're going to be there, right?
I'm going to be there with bells on.
At the Washington Hall, 6:30 until 9 o'clock. Jazz, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for
Street
having
Beat.
me. This was great.
All right. That's it. That's all the time I have. That's going to do it for the kid. It's me, Tony B., your host of Street Beat, saying, remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you cannot, you're probably right. I'm out. Peace.